Hello, everybody. Bom dia, bom dia, bom dia. I hope everyone is doing fantastic today. It is a beautiful morning, and today we're going to talk about pitching. And the whole session today is going to be in English. So we will talk about pitching, storytelling, and English. This is a chance for you to practice and to think about your communication in your pitching in both Portuguese, English, Spanish, Chinese, whatever language you speak. I'm talking today in English, but the whole presentation is all about communication. I saw yesterday, I was looking at the YouTube videos from the HardTalks session, and I saw there was a hard talk about communication, about speaking. And in this session today with me, and I will introduce myself in a moment, I am going to talk about some of the similar or some of the familiar topics that were in that session, but I'm going to approach it from a different angle. I'm going to talk about public speaking, communication, and pitching from a very specific background. And we can talk about how you can transform your presentations from boring to brilliant. And I want to share with you some storytelling tips, behind the scenes tips and techniques from my background that are going to help you in your pitching in whatever language you're speaking. Okay, so I'm going to start the presentation. And then after that, we can ask any questions. I love to do this. You will see my background and understand what my approach is and why I am really excited for your questions at the end of the presentation. I'm going to share my screen, and I won't be able to see any of the chat while I'm speaking, but put your questions in the chat if you have them while I'm talking, and I can come back to it. If not, save it for the end, and we can have a virtual conversation about communication, pitching, and storytelling. All right. So let me share my screen here and get into the presentation. 1 second. You should be able to, 1 second. Yeah, you can see my screen. Here we go. I'm going to play from the start. This is the presentation that I told you about. Boring to brilliant, storytelling secrets to pitch like a pro. Let's go. So I imagine that a lot of you recognize this picture, or you recognize this setting. A lot of people tell me it's Shark Tank. This is Shark Tank, and it's close. It's actually Dragon's Den from the UK, from the United Kingdom. This is the original, or as we say in English, the OG. Now, I want you to think about your experience of watching this show or knowing about this show. The people who sit in those chairs, they're looking for something really specific. They're looking for your value proposition, your product, your go-to-market strategy, your team, your ideas, your leadership, right? They are looking for all of those things. But something else that they are looking for that not a lot of people talk about is actually something that's kind of under all of that information, that's under all of the data, your hard work, your statistics, and your strategies. And as I've traveled all over the world, I'm in Brazil right now. I was just in Spain last week. But as I've traveled all over the world, and I've worked with startups, entrepreneurs, and business professionals, I've learned that there's one really specific thing that the people in those chairs want that they're not getting. And that is storytelling. It's passion. It's emotion. It's really, really engaging with your material, with your pitch, with your presentation. or your introduction. And it's really curious to me because I look at storytelling as a big word, right? A lot of people think that storytelling is the message, is the pitch, is the text in a book, something like that, right? And yes, that's true. That is storytelling. But storytelling is also, what are you going to do with the message, with the text, with your pitch? It's not just the words, it's what are you gonna do with the words? And storytelling can also be divided into a few different categories, much like we learned in the hard talk that was presented yesterday. And one of those is your voice, also your body, and your emotions. But as I've traveled all over the world, from Brazil to Germany to Guatemala, Mexico, Argentina, Spain, Portugal, everywhere I go, I realize that the amount of people that are using all three of these techniques, all three of these aspects of storytelling at the same time, is actually a very small number. And that's even more surprising to me when we think about this quote from a gentleman that was mentioned yesterday, Warren Buffett. He says that by improving your communication skills, you can increase your value by half, which is insane to me because I've learned from my experience that public speaking and communication is something that is one of the last things that people think about. But to me, that's so surprising when somebody like Warren Buffett, an expert in business, says that you can increase your value by 50%. So to me, you are doing a very smart thing today by tuning into this webinar and thinking about your communication, how you speak, and how you tell a story. So, speaking of stories, I want to tell you a story. My name's Chris Rowe, and I'm a presentation and pitch coach. I'm a communication coach. I'm also a speaker. I'm a host. I'm a moderator at events. And this has been my job for the last 5.5 years, working all over the world. But that's not the true story. There's actually another part of my life of how I started being a presentation and a pitch coach, especially for entrepreneurs. And that is, I'm an actor. I grew up as a little kid as an actor. I studied acting in school. I studied acting in college and university. And then I also received my master's degree in acting. After that, I moved to New York City, and I lived in New York City for over 10 years, living a life as an actor, also a director, producing creative events. And the last 2 years that I was living in New York City before the pandemic, I was I was in charge of a theater company. And that theater company in New York City was about the creation, the development, and the production of brand new plays, brand new stories. When I was in graduate school, I studied Shakespeare and all of the classics. And in New York City, I was creating and developing stories for the modern world. So I really have a very wide experience of storytelling. And that has been my life since I was a kid until today. The other aspect of this, of how I ended up in Brazil, is that I used to be an English teacher. I speak Spanish as well e falo un pouco de português, un pouco. But I also, as an actor, I worked with accents in different characters I have to play. So I understand communication from many, 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 many different angles, different aspects, not only as an actor, but as a coach as well, and as a person who speaks on stage, leads conversations, and hosts live events. So that's my background and how I started doing what I'm doing today. But this was not planned. This is not what I thought I would be doing with my life. And my story in this journey all starts in Germany. I told you I have a very curious life around the world. And in 2019, I was living in New York City, acting, directing, working with the theater company, teaching my English classes. And I was contacted by these three guys, Andy, Byrne, and Felix. And Andy, Byrne, and Felix are the founders of a startup conference, a tech and innovation conference in Munich, Germany. And when they contacted me, they had a very specific and cool challenge that they were looking for help. They were looking for help from a native speaker. And they found me on the website, the platform I used to teach English. And they told me that their challenge was they had to present an opening ceremony speech. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Bits and Pretzels, et cetera, et cetera. And that this specific speech, this specific presentation needed to be memorized in English in front of 7,000 people. And part of this presentation was to introduce the keynote speaker, the main speaker of the event. And that main speaker of the event just casually happened to be that guy. Yeah. Barack Obama. So in my world, I was like, what the is happening right now? So I said, all right, you have a very big challenge and I know how to do this. So what did we do? I focused with these three guys like an actor and a director presenting their speech, just like a performance. So what we focused on was storytelling. They had the message, they had the script, the text, and I helped them bring it to life. Or what I call, we took it from the page to the stage, focusing on storytelling, their voice, their body, and their emotions in connection with the message. We also worked on some of the aspects of the message, which I'll talk about later today. So that's my story. And that's how I started coaching global leaders, entrepreneurs, investors, lawyers, all different kinds of people. But the majority of my time, the majority of my work has been working with startups, helping them to tell their stories so that they can gain attention, they can get funding, money, 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 and that they can get recognition for all the hard work, innovative ideas, and passion that you guys are working on. So how do we do this? Something I've created over the year from my background is a method. I have a whole methodology of how I approach this. This is basically how actors approach performance. And I call it the triple P performers method to approach your public speaking. So I want to go into some detail here with you all. We have about 30 minutes to explore this, and then I'll leave about 15 minutes at the end to answer any questions or to ask anything that you want some more information about. So the very first thing that we can talk about here in the triple P performers method is the first one. It's precision. And precision is about your voice. The session that you had yesterday was all about this, was about clarity of speech. I'm going to give you some behind the scenes tips that go a little bit deeper into what she was speaking about yesterday. But this is about making your message energetic, making your message pop, and making your message super clear to understand, no matter what language you're speaking. The next one is presence. That's step 2 or P2. And that is your body. I'll go into this into some more detail. I'll show you some tips that you can do even in a virtual meeting or standing on stage. And this is a way that you can tell a story without even opening your mouth. All right, so we'll get into that in a little bit, how actors approach performance using their body, nonverbal expressions, et cetera, et cetera. And the last thing I want to share is tip number 3, or P number 3, which is persuasion. And I think in the startup world, persuasion is a very, very important aspect of pitching. This is how you become memorable. This is how you stand out. This is how you grab someone's attention and make them want to be a part of everything that you're building. And I'll show you how actors do this and how you can take these tools, you can take these techniques and apply it to your pitches and stand out and become memorable. So let me show you how this works. P1 is about precision. This is all about your voice. I don't want to repeat a lot of the information that was shared in the talk yesterday. I want to show you how this works and how you can apply this to your pitch, to your presentations. So the first thing that we all know is clarity, clarity of speech. Now, I know that I'm speaking probably to an audience that speaks Portuguese, right? And this, I looked at the YouTube channel, everything is in Portuguese. So I know, Chris, that this presentation is specific because it's in English. And I'm being very, very intentional with how I'm speaking through this whole presentation because I don't know the different levels of English of the people that are listening to me. So I'm speaking very clear, very intentionally, and I always use this microphone so that I am as clear as possible. This is the same brand, German brand of microphone that I used when I was teaching English before the pandemic. So I need you to be able to hear me as clear as possible, because if you can't hear the message, then you're lost, right? So one of the things that we can do is we can look at the anatomy or the mechanics of how your mouth moves. And I want you to think about public speaking like a sport. Do you know how many muscles are in your face? I mean, we have so many muscles in our body, but how many muscles we use to control our speech, and control how we speak. That is something that we need to warm up. I knew I was going to be speaking today in my native language for 1 hour. So when I was getting ready for this presentation, I am warming up or stretching my mouth. I want to show you inside your mouth so you can understand what is going on inside your mouth when you're speaking, so that you realize the importance of clarity. So this is an MRI inside someone's mouth. He is going to beatbox. And beatboxes make music like, right? I want you to watch his mouth as he beatboxes. Here he goes. Kind of weird, right? But this just shows you an inside look at what is going on inside your mouth. So your tongue is moving all over the place. And if you don't open your mouth when you speak, all of that movement gets lost. And so all of a sudden, if you start speaking like this and you don't put any emphasis, you don't put anything into your mouth, it's a little bit harder for you to understand me. And it's a lot less interesting to listen to if I speak to you like that, correct? I want you to see the difference of putting no effort into my face and putting a lot of intention into the way that I'm speaking. I share this picture of me here. This is a picture of me acting. And I put this in there so that you guys can understand what goes into a performance. This is a picture from a play that I acted in New York and all over the world, Chicago, Prague, also in New Orleans. And in this play, it was a play for one actor, me. And I played 7 different characters in this play. It was just me, all alone on stage for 1 hour and 20 minutes, talking to myself as different characters. Every single one of those characters speaks differently. So I had different accents. Sometimes I spoke up here, and sometimes I spoke way down here. I used all these different elements of my face, my voice, to make those characters different, but they had to be clear. And the only way that I can move my face and manipulate my voice is by warming up, just like I'm going to go run a 5K, or I'm going to go play football or fuchiboli in the beach here in Rio. Right? You've got to warm up your face if you're going to speak. So that's part of it. That involves pronunciation, articulation, intonation, all of these things that the other talk about clear speech went into. The other element of precision is clarity, and that's the same slide. Where's this other one? Is going into tongue twisters, trava-linguas, right? We talked about this. These are ones in English. I know they exist in every single language, but this helps you speak in a clear way. The other thing that we can talk about is vocal variety and how to bring your language to life. This is something that I talked about earlier, and how you can take your information, your data, your statistics from the page to the stage. And one element of this is something I call emotionally charged language. These are words in your presentations, in your speech, that are waiting for you to fill them with emotions about how you feel. I'll talk about this a little bit later as well, but I want to give you an idea of how this works. You can take a positive word like congratulations, right? Parabéns, felicidades, whatever language we're speaking, right? And we can use this depending on the particular or specific situation that we are in, and we can make the same word sound completely different with our emotions and how we feel about the situation. So, for example, maybe you received funding for your startup. Maybe you received a new job. Maybe you won a pitch competition. And in that moment, I might say, congratulations, congrats, that's amazing, right? That's a very specific situation, emotion, and relationship. Also, maybe your kid did something really fantastic, or this is my niece, and yes, I have her permission to use her face for my presentation. But maybe your niece, your daughter, your granddaughter did something really amazing, and you're really, really proud of her. So you might say, congratulations, I'm so proud of you, right? That's a completely different situation, a completely different emotion, and a completely different expression of the same word. Or maybe your little dog, Pablo, finally got the message and went to the bathroom. He went pee outside and not inside on your rug. Congratulations. Oh my God, you finally learned to do it, right? That's a very different situation. But look, we can also make this negative. We can also make this into a negative situation or a negative experience using a word like ugh, or a sound like ugh, frustrated, right? I'm so frustrated. And do you hear how when I'm talking about something negative, my voice comes down here? So we can think about frustrating situations. Maybe you are overwhelmed at work. You have burnout. Oh my God, I'm so frustrated, right? That is something very real in the entrepreneur world. Or maybe your home office isn't really working, or your assistant needs some typing lessons, right? Oh my God, I'm so frustrated, right? I'm gonna quit. That's a very different emotion and a very different situation. Or maybe little Pablo didn't get the message and went to the bathroom all over your brand new rug. Oh my God. I'm so frustrated, right? These are all different ways for you to express yourself using the words that you're speaking. But this can work for more than just emotional words. This can also work for data, for statistics, right? I used a number, a very dramatic number here. But in a presentation, as you're talking about your growth or your go to market strategy, any of this, you could report something and say, last year we experienced a 250% growth. What I usually hear is something like, and last year we experienced a 250% growth, which is a 25% difference from last year, right? It's just like a robot. No one wants to listen to a robot. They want to listen to a human, especially in this world of artificial intelligence, virtual calls. We have to work harder to connect to the message so that we can connect to each other, because that is what makes you memorable, clear, and makes people want to learn more. They want to invest more in your time and also in your business. So that's how the being very precise, P number one with precision, that's how that works. So the second one is your body. And I'm going to show you guys something. I've been sitting this entire time, but I want to show you how just a small little trick can change everything with your storytelling in your body. And that's your presence. Whether you're on stage or you're online, you're sitting down, or just a quick trick, you're standing up. Now, the only thing that I have done here is I put my computer on a chair. And now I have the ability to move all over this virtual square. This is not a tiny little compartment or a tiny little area that you should feel trapped. To me, with virtual communication, this is a box to fill. You have all this space to fill. And when my presentation is a huge part of this screen and I'm this little itty bitty, teeny tiny square over here, I want your attention. I don't have a lot of words on my slides, and that's for a very specific reason, because a human is always going to be more engaging and more entertaining, or it should be, than a bunch of words on a page. Use your emotions, your body, and your voice to get your message across. The thing about your body language, we've talked about how important your voice is, but something like 92% of our communication is nonverbal. It's not about the words, it's about the image. So I want you to start thinking about, what are you using to fill this little square? And also, if you're on stage, if you're standing at a meeting, or you're at a networking event, I want you to think, is the story you are telling the whole room? And that comes down to a couple of things that start before you even open your mouth. And that is your posture, whether you're sitting or you're standing or you're walking. This tells a story. You think about it. We judge people. We always do it, good or bad. And it always happens within the first 7 seconds of meeting somebody, before you even open your mouth. When you walk in a room, when you come on the camera, when you're in a virtual meeting, as soon as that camera is on, that's telling a story. And so when we think about this, there's all different aspects of our body that we can go into that really tell the story. For example, we can look at an image like this. This is from this is talking about, I don't know how to say this in Portuguese. It's about your posture and chiropractic, right? This is about your bad back. This image in the middle, this is perfect posture, right? But we can look at any of these other images, and immediately, if I asked you, start to describe this person, you would start judging them. You might say, oh, this guy looks bored. This guy looks like he hates his job. This guy looks like he's really old. This guy looks like he has a lot of confidence, or maybe he's too cocky, right? That he has too much of his chest out like this, right? Or this person, you might think they're not very good at their job, they're bored, they're boring, right? I could ask you their age, I could ask you their job, I could ask you all different kinds of questions, and you have a judgment of them. But think about this. This is a light blue color with a white line around it on a dark blue background. And without more information than that, you and me can create an entire opinion about that person. It's a drawing on a paper. And if that image on a paper allows us to make very, very strong opinions, imagine the opinions that we make about people online and on stage. But also, what does this posture say, what story does this posture tell, not only to the people that are watching you, but to yourself? Your presentation, your pitch, it starts before you get on stage and before you come on that camera. It starts the morning when you wake up. I told myself today, oh my gosh, I get to talk about public speaking today. I love talking about that. And it changed the way that I was sitting when I started this meeting. And it's changing the way that I'm communicating to you right now, because I'm thinking about what is the story that my face is sharing with you. And that goes to this next point. Really start to observe yourself and objectively look at yourself without judging. That really helps you to look at your recordings, or to have somebody film you when you're on stage, and watch yourself. Be your own director, so that then you can make the corrections that you want to, so that you are presenting in a way that tells the story that you want it to. Right now, I cannot see myself. I cannot see you. I only see this presentation and a green light. But because of all of my experiences teaching and coaching online, and because I've studied myself as an actor and a coach, I know exactly what kind of space I have here. And I'm constantly reminding myself, what is your face saying? What are your hands saying? Make sure your hands are up here and not down here where you can't see them, right? This all goes into studying your communication. And what does your body language say to you and to the people that are watching you? The last thing in here is persuasion. It's the final P that I want to talk about. And this is an aspect in a lot of public speaking that I think gets lost. It gets left out. And this comes from my experience as an actor. You can see here, this is an image of me in the play that I told you about, where I'm playing two different characters. And these are two very different emotions. This play is like a scary story, and this is like the scary part of the story. So you can see that this picture tells a lot, and the emotion, I hope, looks real. So how do actors do this, and how can you take this information, put it in your presentations, and persuade the person who's listening to you? How you be memorable. And that is your emotions. It's really understanding and identifying what the emotion is in the moment. What's the emotion that you want to feel? What's the emotion that you want the audience to feel? Whether that's an investor or a group of students, whatever it is. You have to first identify it. You want to be, you want to have confidence? Do you want to communicate joy? Do you want to communicate excitement, fear, anxiety? What do you want to communicate? You have to identify it first, and then you have to understand, where does that emotion talk on your body and in your voice? Because if I want to talk about something scary or depressing or sad, I can use my voice, my body, and my emotions to tell that story, right? The other thing that we do is we use we use our memories and our imagination. And you can do that as well. When I'm coaching, whether it's a pitch or people who are presenting in a panel at conferences, or a keynote talk at conferences, job interviews, I always ask people to take a second and stop. Stop thinking about all of the things you need to do, you're working on, your checklist, and just remember why. Why are you working so hard? Why did you start your business? Why do you sacrifice so much of your life for your product, your business, and your ideas? And that will connect you to the memory of the idea of, I have got to do this job. It takes you back to that emotion, that original emotion. And when you re-access that, you start speaking and connecting in a brand new way. Too many times I watch people who are pitching for the first time or the 100th time, and the message is always the same. And it sounds boring because you forget how you feel. There's so many other things in your life that are going on, in your business that are going on, and we forget, oh my God, I love what I'm doing. I'm so passionate about what I'm trying to change. And it takes me back to the first image I showed you of the 4 different chairs on the stage and what they're looking for. You all know what needs to go in that pitch, but how are you going to talk about it? And this is the final element to persuade somebody, to really get in there and use that emotionally charged language, whether it's congratulations or frustrated or a 250% growth. That's all about, how do you feel about what you're talking about? It's something that I see all over the world that gets lost. And it's really curious to me, being in Brazil for the last couple of years, that I understand Brazilians are some of the most passionate people I have ever met. And you all know it's true. Yet when I watch you pitch, something happens, especially in English. And I understand. I understand how public speaking, pitching, people have a lot of fear about this. I get it. And the presentation yesterday talked about, it's not about the fear of public speaking, it's the fear of failing. Yet when we allow ourselves to connect with how we feel about the message, it takes the focus away from having perfect English. And look, I watched Lady Gaga on the beach of Copacabana. And when Brazilians tell me, oh, my English is horrible, my English is terrible, listen, I was there on the beach and I listened to you sing every single word that Lady Gaga sings. I know it's a song and I know their lyrics, but what I want to tell you is, the more that you have confidence and connection to your message and your why, the less the language matters. Okay? It's just an observation I've had listening to Brazilians pitch. The last thing is, when you have all this going from here, you're able to connect your message with your personality. Somewhere in the world, we were all taught in the professional business world that being professional meant you can't have a personality. I disagree. I think that they should be together. We can still be professional and be personable. That's what makes you connect with other people. And that's what makes people have trust and confidence in you. I want to show you this image of some people that I've worked with in the past as well. This is Felix. He was one of the founders who introduced Obama. But these other people who I've worked with over the years, this is their feedback when they've worked with me. And this particular guy here said, Anthony, he learned how to truly and honestly inspire an audience by connecting to my emotions. And I think about, without that coaching that he did with me, his message would be, he used to be a professional poker player with cards. So he had to hide all of his emotions. That's what he was really good at. But when I started working with him, it was about connecting to his audience, selling his message, and finding money. If he did that like a poker player and didn't think about expressing his emotions, he would never have the business that he has today, which is all over Europe and in the Middle East. I think about that with all these people I've worked with. Without this knowledge that they learned working with me, with your voice, your body, and your emotions, they would not be succeeding in the way they are today. The final element of this, which I call the triangle of truth, it shows you how the connectedness, the connectivity, or the connection of all three of the triple P's put together, what it leads to. The first thing is precision. When you are comfortable with what you're talking about, you are in control of how it comes out of your mouth. The second one is presence. And when you are comfortable, then you become confident. And you're telling that confident story not only through your mouth, but through your body, your facial expressions, your eye contact, and the story that you're telling as you speak online or you speak on stage. And the final element, like we talked about, is persuasion. And when you're able to feel really comfortable and confident, it allows you to connect. It allows you to persuade people to believe in you, to trust you, and to know that you can be the leader of this team. And when you put all three of those together, you've got truth. That's why I call it the triangle of truth, because then you can just communicate like yourself, the real, authentic version of you, not the data scientist, not the engineer, but you, this person. That is what takes boring presentations and turns them into a show. It's a performance. And I want you all to think about your public speaking and your pitching like a performance. This is a behind the scenes journey of the method that I've created from my acting background that I use with entrepreneurs, business professionals, investors, lawyers, all kinds of people all over the world. If you're not connected with me yet, I put my social media here, my website. I'm really active on LinkedIn. You can connect with me here. I share tips like this all the time because I've learned from my experience of traveling and working with people as an English teacher and now as a communication coach, that these three elements change the game of your communication. And so I realize also people didn't get this education. This is something for me as an actor that I've known since I was a little kid. And now I'm on a mission to share this information with global entrepreneurs so that they can apply this in English or whatever native language they're speaking. That is the tour, the behind the scenes tour of what goes into performance and what you can use in your pitches and your presentations. That is the end of the show for now. And I'm going to lead it to you for any questions, comments, specific information that you might need. I see one already from Shilton. Many early stage founders believe they'll only have a good story once their project is up and running. How can someone still in the idea stage craft a compelling story right from the beginning? Super, super curious question. And I actually am doing a session in a couple weeks about this very specific thing. Think about it this way. If you're thinking about a writer who's coming up with an idea for a movie, a Netflix series, or a new book, they have to have that idea from somewhere, right? So some of it is think about what was the spark of the idea that made you commit to building a business. And some of that is the pain point that your product solves, a personal story of how you got started, or something that you saw, a moment that really made that spark go off. That is like the ignition in your car, right? If you start thinking about that, I think that becomes the foundation of a story about what you're trying to tell. As you're building everything, that is just extra, right? All the data, all the statistics, the market strategy, all those things will come later. But what you need is the origin story, the why. So that is the part I think gets lost or that we forget. So if you think about that original idea, that original moment in your brain where you thought, okay, I've got to change this. I think that gives you the foundation to build from. Does that answer your question? I hope so. I can't see you. Can you name someone that impressed you so much in your pitch that you'll never forget his name? Absolutely. The story I was just telling you. One thing I talk about all the time is use stories. Use personal stories or use metaphors. Use examples. And I remember several years ago, I was in Germany. I still go to Germany every year to coach the pitch competition. And I will never forget the guy. His name is Henry. I don't remember his last name, but I remember his pitch. And what his business was about was they were creating new beds, like new technology for beds in hospitals. Why do I remember this? It sounds kind of like, okay, because he started the story with talking about the experience he had of being in the hospital with his mother as she was dying and talking about how uncomfortable she was and looking around and talking about his experience. That's something that we can all empathize with. We all know when we have a loved one in our life that's sick, right? And we want them to be in the most comfortable situation as possible. That is a completely human, empathetic thing that we can all connect to. And that's how he started the story. He grabbed my attention. He didn't start with, hello, my name is. He didn't start with a boring, okay, hello, everybody. This is what, like a synopsis of everything he wanted to talk about. He talked about a story and something really emotional that we could all relate to. It grabbed my attention right away. One other example, and I've seen this several times. I was just at the South Summit conference in Porto Alegre. This was back in April. And I was watching the semifinal pitch competition. And there was a guy that walked on stage. Look, I'm an actor from New York. So if I'm listening to pitches from a business perspective, my information is very little, right? Or my knowledge is very little compared to an investor. That guy walked on stage, and I said to my friend, he's going to win. How did I know that? Because he walked onto that stage. He walked in right there, and he was like, hello, everybody. Hello, judges. Welcome. From the second he walked on stage, I trusted him. I believed in him. And he was so prepared, but he was also personable. He allowed his personality to come out. And so his pitch wasn't a presentation, it was a conversation. And I felt like I was there to have him share that information with me. It was confident, it was clear, and it was full of passion and personality. And guess what? He won the pitch competition. So that shows you, even without the product, the go-to market strategy, the team, I could still feel that this guy knew what he was doing, knew how to lead a team, and knew how to move an audience. So those are two examples I think of. What else? What else you got? Any other questions? Comments? Monica, entrepreneurs often need to communicate with diverse audiences. How can they adapt their narrative without losing the essence of their message? This is super important. This goes back to when I was acting. I'll walk into a room and it's a different energy, right? I'll walk into a theater and it's a different energy. Sometimes it's on a Sunday at 2:00, and sometimes it's on a Saturday night at 8 p.m. That's a different thing. People have had a couple drinks, or maybe they're just coming from church. I don't know. It's a different thing. So I have to stay on the message, but I have to shift my energy a little bit for that audience. That's an energetic switch. Right now, I can't see anybody, right? As opposed to I'm standing on a stage of 400 people where I can see and feel the energy. So I'm adapting my energy right now. But I'm also, like I told you, I'm adapting the way that I'm speaking right now because I don't know your levels of English. You could speak better English than me, or you could be a beginner. So with that knowledge, I'm adapting, honestly, the words that I'm choosing to say. I'm not using very American English words. I'm trying to use really general but specific words. I'm speaking slow. I'm putting a lot of pauses in my speech, right? Those are all things about a diverse audience in terms of the energy and the clarity. But the other thing that you're asking is your pitch has to be versatile. It can't be the same thing for every single audience. You could be pitching to an investor who's an expert in your business, in your field, right? And then 1 hour later, you might be pitching to an angel investor that doesn't know anything about your industry. Or you're pitching to a former actor, a former actor from New York. So you have to think, what's the language that I'm using when I'm speaking to an expert? And what's the language I'm using when I'm speaking to somebody that's not an expert? How can I use stories, metaphors, examples? How can I explain this to my grandma or my niece or an industry expert? You have to think about the message, the words, the examples you're going to use to make it clear to whoever you're talking to, right? If I was doing this presentation in the US for a bunch of college students, I would be speaking in a very different way. The message, the material is the same, but the way that I would communicate it, completely different. Same thing if I was talking to investors, I would be talking about how investors can use this information for themselves, but also for their portfolios, right? I'm adapting my message to the specific audience. So as you're having investor meetings, as you're pitching, you've got to think about the big picture. It can't be the same message for everything. You should have a 30-second pitch, a minute pitch, a 5-minute pitch, a 10-minute pitch. The presentation I just gave you, that can be 45 minutes. It can be 15 minutes. It can be 3 hours long. I just have to understand the material, the audience, and what they might or might not know. Does that make sense? I hope so. Anything else? We've got just a couple minutes left. I'll take one more question maybe. and then we will wrap it up. Anybody else? 10, 9, 8. Okay. I think I'll leave it at that. I gave you my social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I know I'm connected here with all of you. If you want to reach out, if you're looking for some extra support, if you're looking for more insights, if you're looking for how to improve your story, I love helping people. I've got programs. I do conversations like this. I try to do it once a month, where I have open pitching, where people can show up. But I also travel all over the world. I do live workshops where I work with people so you can pitch and practice no matter where you are. So I try to give this information to everybody because I know as I've traveled the world, it's not something that is accessible necessarily. So I give this to you. Whatever you need, I'm happy to help. Thank you all very much for joining. And just remember, the way that you connect to your why tells a story for everybody. And when you think about your pitch as a performance, that's how you go from boring to brilliant. That's storytelling tips to pitch like a pro. Thank you all very much. Muito obrigado. I hope you have a fantastic day. Ciao.